We're going to get cracking.
Great.
Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us on today's Live Well Live webinar from Boots Online Doctor. My name is Dr. Samantha Wellapilly. I am a GP. I'm also part of the lifestyle medicine team here, and we are thrilled to be here pretty much every Monday lunchtime to support you in a holistic fashion on your weight loss journey. So we really have a holistic eye on weight loss, and we try and present practical things, evidence-based strategies, so we can really support you to lose the weight and achieve your goals but also maintain that healthier weight for as long as possible, because that's what it's all about. And I'm joined by my colleague Ruth, who's going to say hi also.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ruth Taylor. I'm a nutritionist with Boots Online Doctor, also a registered nurse. And yeah, absolutely. We love being here on a Monday with you. It really is your accountability drop-in session, your session to just hopefully get some top tips to keep you motivated and inspired for the week. And really your opportunity to bring along any questions that you have brought with you. So that brings us nicely to, please, if possible, pop your questions into the Q&A box. It makes it so much easier for us to find them, and we will do our best to answer as many questions as possible, depending on the numbers we get through. The majority of them, and sometimes if the numbers are very huge of people who are here, we will get through the ones that we can. Um, and very much we will share a recording of the session on the YouTube that will come out to you in a link. So if you miss anything or want to recap on anything, don't worry, you should be able to watch the replay. And if you've brought any questions with you, please pop them straight into the Q&A box. We'll be sharing some slides and we'll take your questions towards the end. We're also joined by Gareth today, so thank you so much, Gareth. We know how much support we get from having you here, and support for all of the people who are attending as well. So thank you so much also for being here with us today.
Great.
Just to let you know, I think one last thing we should say is any very, very specific medical questions about yourself, we will just direct you to the right person to get that support and advice from. We can't really answer one-to-one medical questions in a public-facing webinar, just so you all know that. Great. Sorry, Sam, to interrupt, but I just thought that was such
No,
an important
I'm
thing.
just saying we're getting lots of lovely comments. And if you're putting a comment in the chat box and you're happy to share it, maybe mark your comment as to everyone. Otherwise, me and Ruth get them, but no one else can see. And it's quite nice to talk to each other because Trisha shared that she had a wedding anniversary. Congratulations. So had
Wow.
a good and bad weekend. Fantastic. But back on track now. Brilliant. That's, 80/20 rule, and it's a celebration. You've got to enjoy. That's completely fine.
Yeah.
Um,
Life has
so
as well, hasn't it?
yeah, totally, totally. Um, yeah. Right. Yes. Accountability check-in for anybody who would like to share how their week's been gone. Trisha's let us know that she had quite a very enjoyable celebration, so that has slightly, taken her a little bit off kilter, but she's back on track. Fantastic. That's it can be as easy as that. But yeah, let us know how you're doing. We've just launched a poll as well about the topic of today's webinar, which is all about stress, which is a topic I think is actually not addressed so much, perhaps in terms of weight loss. I think it's really good that we do address it because we know more and more, and as both Ruth and I are nutritionists, we know how much stress impacts our inflammation pathways and can lead to that, mainly that central tummy, that central adiposity, the sort of fat deposition around our organs because of the hormonal pathways that our stress can set off. Well, we're going to go more into that. Um,
And just
but
to remind
do,
you that the polls are completely anonymous, so do have
yes.
it because we don't know. We know we can see people are answering, which is great. And obviously, there's no pressure to take part in the polls, but if it's very interesting for everyone here, we'll share the results with you, completely anonymous. So it's really just so we get a flavour of how everyone is feeling today and what's going on for everyone who is here. So, and thank you. That's great.
Yeah. So a lot of people are well versed in stress and do frequently feel a bit stressed out in their daily lives. And lots of people here actually do have a good awareness that stress can impact your ability to lose weight. Um, but there are lots of you that need to know or want to know a bit more. Um, yeah.
Those of you who are feeling really fatigued with low energy, feeling anxious, irritable, overwhelmed, such a large number of people craving for sugar or comfort foods. I can put myself in that bracket. And even though I know all the science, that's the whole point, isn't it? It's amazing how when stress comes along in a big wallop, it can just take the legs out from underneath you. For all of us, we're all human. So we are just the same as you. We're human. We may be slightly further forwards or even further behind in our journeys. This isn't a competition. This is about humans helping humans, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
I would say. So let's have a look. Should we quickly share the results? Very, there's only one person I think who says that they have only rarely experienced stress. The majority of people are getting stressed quite frequently. Let's have a quick look and share the results. Really interesting just to see what's going on, isn't it, for everyone? And if you're in a maintenance phase of your weight loss journey, this is just as important, isn't it? As thinking about stress and how it's potentially impacting you is just as important. So, really interesting for everybody to see how everybody else is feeling as well. You're not alone. It's really obvious. You're completely not alone. So, let's stop sharing and let's move on to our quick second poll. We'd just be interested to hear from you which phase of weight loss you're in. And we've added a little question to this, just wondering how much weight you're aiming to lose or how much weight you've lost. There's no right answer. Again, it's completely anonymous. But I think also just nice to know there are other people in similar boats to you, because none of us are alone, really. So,
No, absolutely. And also, we've got some lovely comments in here that one of us is just reporting that they've, oh gosh, that they bought new scales and showed others the wrong calibration and actually officially lost 30 kilos in 2 years. That's fantastic. That's a great achievement. Well done.
30 kilos. Gosh, that's amazing, isn't it? That's really, really fantastic. Well done.
Well done. And
So,
the importance of, yeah, of knowing our scales are quite accurate. Otherwise, it can be a little bit disappointing,
it's
can't it? It must have. So
demoralizing when
well done for persevering.
things happening and just think, okay, new scale time. And there you go. Wasn't that great? And look, it's so interesting. So the majority, 50% of you who are here today are halfway through your journey. Can be a really tricky time in terms of motivation and keeping that sense of perspective, keeping on going. About 12% of you, so are almost at your goal. Well done. There are another 9% of you who are in maintenance phase. Absolutely brilliant. So, that's almost 20% of people who are almost at goal or in maintenance, which is really great. And welcome to the starting out people. Have you been here before? Is this your first time joining us? Hopefully, you'll go away with something that will be really helpful for you today. And if you have a question, don't hesitate to ask. There's no such thing as a silly question. We are all humans. So 30% of you starting out, say thank you. Really interesting. And a whole variety of what people would like to lose or are aiming to lose or have lost, all the way from sort of the 1 stone people up to 5 or more stone. So you are really, it's really nice to know what's going on for people. Thank you for sharing that with us. It's really interesting, really helpful, and great to have you here. Let's move on, Sam. I feel we could talk polls all day long.
Yep, yep, let's move on because we only have an hour.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
So let's talk about how stress impacts our weight loss journey. So that's really the crux of this webinar. So chronic stress or daily stress affects far more than just our mood. It can have a significant impact on our physical health and our eating behaviors, which I think lots of us have noticed from that poll, and ultimately, of course, our weight. When we experience stress, our bodies release hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. Um, and cortisol, it's these hormones are designed to set off the processes that are designed to help us cope with short-term challenges by making energy more available. However, when stress is long-term or chronic, um, a persistent cortisol level can make it harder for the body to regulate blood sugar effectively, increasing hunger and encouraging fat storage, particularly around the tummy. So around visceral fat, this is the fat that we get accumulating around the organs of the abdomen. We also know that stress can increase our cravings for those highly palatable, sugary, high fat foods. And many people, I'm sure I will definitely put my hand up to this one, as Ruth said already, notice themselves reaching out for those comfort foods when they are stressed, tired, or overwhelmed. Um, Stress also affects our everyday behaviors. We might be more likely to skip exercise classes or going on that walk or doing that thing that we planned. We might also end up relying more on convenience food or ultra processed foods, eating on the go because we haven't got time, we're in a rush, or even, of course, overeating for emotional comfort. And for many people, emotional eating becomes a coping strategy. And in the short term, it might provide comfort or distraction, but over time, it can become an automatic response to stress. Um, and the kind of comfort that we get actually might be diminished the more and more we do the same behavior. The good news is that awareness is incredibly powerful. Once we begin to recognize those patterns, we can start to put healthier coping strategies in place. So, throughout today's session, we'll explore practical ways to support your stress response, including lifestyle changes and nutrition. Um, Even if your goal is weight maintenance rather than weight loss, managing stress remains really important because stress can affect your appetite, your sleep, your energy levels, and your risk of weight regain.
Yeah, it's such an important, and as you said right at the beginning, Sam, such an often overlooked subject. So I guess we've already said it's a really normal part of life, but when stress becomes chronic, it can have a significant impact on both our physical and our mental health. So this is why it's such an important thing to be thinking about. Our emotional well-being can really determine or undermine how we go about our daily lives. So when we're under a huge amount of stress, our bodies will release hormones such as cortisol, which is something that is designed to help us survive short-term threats. We're very, very basic, really, still in terms of how we function. I guess that's probably never going to change, is it? However, if we have ongoing long-term stress and cortisol remains elevated for prolonged periods, many people notice that they will experience more hunger, they might find that they're having cravings, and they also will find that have a greater tendency to eat for comfort rather than just because of physical hunger. And I think this is a really good point. And if you're one of those people, then using something like the food and mood tracker would be really good. Actually, getting a sense of perspective of whether this is true hunger, whether this is emotional hunger, whether this is stress driving hunger, and actually learning a different approach can be really helpful. So, if you know, Gareth, if you could share the mood and food tracker or the diary, that would be really useful. So cortisol is great because it helps to ensure that we get energy that is available to us during stressful times. So if you think back to more primitive days and we were running away from people who were chasing us or from animals, we needed that cortisol response, but we haven't evolved. So we still have that same cortisol response. And the stress may be that an email didn't send or somebody sent us something that needs to be actioned immediately, or we've had an argument with somebody, or the car didn't start, or the children are playing up before school. Stress is everywhere. Or it could be, oh, I don't know, hundreds of things. Over time, when we have repeatedly elevated cortisol, this can contribute to one of the things that we talk about a lot, which is high blood sugar levels. One of the key things that we know increases our likelihood, your likelihood of storing fat, as Sam was saying, around your abdomen. That is known as visceral fat. Visceral fat is really important for us to be aware of because it isn't only linked to being overweight, but it increases everyone's risk of things like heart disease, type 2 diabetes, also having strokes. This is really crucial. So we aren't only going to be storing more fat, which is going to make it more difficult to lose weight, we also increase our health risks. So managing stress becomes really important. As Sam was saying earlier, awareness is really, really the number one thing to start with. Knowing how stress affects your body, how it affects your choices, and allows you to, getting that awareness can create the opportunity for you to almost take a little bit more control, bring in that mindfulness and that awareness. So this is why we're talking about it today. We know it's such an important element of getting it right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for the long term as well. So, this is kind of a bit of a summary slide, just our brain prioritizing survival in its very primal way. It increases hunger, it increases our cravings for high energy foods, which are very palatable, very easy to access for us in this day and age. It increases our emotional eating patterns to these are often coping mechanisms that we've developed over likely years. Um, Stress can also decrease our motivation. So, we skip the exercise class, we skip the thing that we were going to do to that actually could help us. Ironically, the exercise, obviously, we know it releases lots of feel-good hormones, being with other people, listening to music, all of that sort of thing. There are other ways that can release our feel-good hormones. And it also affects our planning and decision making because our system is kind of overwhelmed with these stress hormones. So stress can make weight loss feel much harder, and kind of stress can kind of make our weight loss commitment kind of fade a little bit. Okay, but we're going to talk more about these things and what can we do about it? How do we strategize?
Yeah, very much so. And it's not just about willpower, is it? It's about really taking control back and actually recognizing you haven't failed. Because I think one of the things we tend to do is when things go awry, is we tend to blame ourselves. And I think we really, really want to be thinking, okay, what else is going on here? This is stress. This is the pattern that happens to me when I'm stressed. And this is why it's really important for me to start thinking, okay, when I'm stressed, instead of reaching for the chocolate bar or the crisps, because there's always going to be the sugary or the salty foods, the high fat or the sugary foods that we will reach for when we're stressed. Rarely do people reach for apples when they're stressed, or berries, or lovely Greek yogurt, or something that might be a healthy option. I was just
And so using the food and mood
thinking,
tracker could be really helpful just
yeah,
to identify those patterns and how you're feeling, because it can be a bit of a vicious cycle as well. Because as soon as you get on that blood sugar roller coaster and you have that chocolate bar, then over the day you might end up, chasing your tail a bit, trying to having sugar spikes and sugar crashes, sugar spike, sugar crash. So, yeah, we don't help ourselves, but I know that generally we're not thinking very clearly when we do those automatic behaviors.
yeah, exactly. And when we're stressed, it can have quite a huge impact on our quality of sleep. Not only the amount of sleep that we get, but whether we're having broken sleep, whether we're waking up several times during the night, whether we're really hungry in the middle of the night. It will have an impact on all of the hormones. Our hormones are like an orchestra, no hormone. So if cortisol is all over the place, up and down, or really high and not coming back down to a nice calm level by the evening, we can just start craving all of the wrong foods at the wrong time. If we then start eating a lot of sugar-rich foods, perhaps in the evening, then we're going to have a blood sugar spike potentially, which would mean that we are going to be feeling a little bit more agitated or awake when we should be falling asleep, and it's just everything goes out of kilter. We also know that when we're sort of sleep deprived, we are likely to eat a lot more food, and the foods that we are likely to eat more of are all of the sugar, all of the salty, all of the high fat processed type of foods. And the research tells us we eat around an extra 300 calories when we're sleep deprived. And sleep deprivation isn't just you go to bed late and you get up early. It is that I've woken up 6 times tonight and I just can't get back to sleep when I'm awake in the middle of the night because my mind starts kicking in. So, really thinking about what you can do here. So, regular sleep times are really important. Thinking about our daily cortisol rhythm. We have a whole webinar dedicated to sleep. So, if sleep is something that is eluding you regularly, do come along to that or watch the replay. So, Gareth, if you could send out the link for replays of all of our previous webinars, that'd be great. But lots of research says reducing screen time use before bed and also thinking about creating a calming routine. We do talk a lot about caffeine and cutting that out at lunchtime. So if you're under a huge amount of stress and you're leaning on caffeine to keep you going, that can have quite a huge impact on your quality of sleep or your ability to sleep at all. So it might be time to be thinking, okay, what could I swap to from lunchtime? Could I go for some decaffeinated coffees or teas, or even better, maybe some chamomile to really bring some calmness into your system? There are lots of things you can do. It is really not simple. We 100% know that. We're quite realistic about how tough all of these changes can be. But it is worth just doing that food symptom tracker, find out what's going on, keep an eye on your stress, keep an eye on your sleep, keep an eye on your waking up in the middle of the night, and really start thinking about what you can do to put some control back in there. So, as I was saying, there's lots of control that you can do. Signs that you might be stressed could be things like difficulty concentrating, having headaches, maybe having a bit of a nervous tummy, having clenched teeth, feeling on edge all of the time, quite fidgety, maybe irritable. Some people will feel very withdrawn. You might notice that actually you just don't want to be sociable. So it's really understanding you and how stress might make you feel. There are all sorts of amazing activities that you can do. And actually, what I've written down is I've written down an affirmation for myself that when I'm stressed, I'm going to walk. And the other one is when I'm stressed, I'm going to dance. Because I think actually, when I'm stressed, the first thing I might do is reach and find any chocolate that might be lurking somewhere in my house. Luckily, I have none now. So I've cleared the cupboards. But it's not easy. So think about activity. Is there something you could easily do when you're stressed? Could you dance a little bit in the kitchen? Could you jog around? Could you do a little 5 minute YouTube segue of something just to break the cycle and give you a little bit of endorphin lifting, mood lifting, and also bring in a bit of relaxation? Sam's going to talk us through a brilliant breathing exercise in a minute, so we'll move on to that. And that is something that can really calm down. Restful sleep is really helpful, not always easy for recovery and to boost resilience. And then all of the way that we eat, the foods that we choose, the snacks that we choose, really important. So have a listen to the how to eat and the what to eat and replays, or come along to the next iteration of those, or ask questions if there's anything you're a little bit stuck on and need to know now. But we know that, changing the foods that we eat can make a huge difference to how our body responds to stress. But I think also one of the things we often don't talk about as much as we could is self-care, time out, really important. And as we've said a couple of times already, knowing your triggers. So you can almost plan ahead, learn how to manage them, get ahead of the game, really important. And that applies for anyone who is on beginning in their journey, in the middle, heading towards the end, or even in maintenance. This is true for all human beings, basically. So there's not many people who wouldn't benefit from getting ahead, being prepared, letting themselves take a little bit of control. So we're going to hand over to Sam, who you're going to talk us through this brilliant breathing technique, Sam, aren't you? Which I
Yes.
do too, and I love it.
Yes, we're going to do some box breathing together just to pick up on what the things that Ruth was saying before. Um, I think some of the things, and we do talk about these in our eating webinars, but swapping out maybe the chocolates, maybe going to dark chocolate, which you can't kind of binge on as easily as milk chocolate, for example. Maybe having some dates with some walnuts sort of on hand if you need that sweet fix, and you're not quite ready to not snack at all when you're feeling a bit stressed out. It, there are loads of things we can do, and I feel like, sometimes we bang on about stress, but actually there are lots of things we can do to improve our resilience. And sometimes it's not carving out extra time when you have no time and you're, running around like a headless chicken trying to sort everything and everyone out. It's sometimes like, okay, well, I'm going to have a shower every day. And in that shower, I am just going to take my time. I am going to breathe. I'm going to use this lovely shower gel that has lavender in it or something like that. Just something that is feels like caring about yourself and just giving yourself some time in that shower to just breathe and be you and smell that, amazing essential oil that, can be really excellent for our nerves and just calming us right down. So sometimes it is finding these little hacks that fit into the routine you already have rather than adding something new. So just an idea there. But yes, let's do some box breathing together. So if you would like to close your eyes, please do, if it's safe to do so. What we're going to do, it's very simple. I'm going to count to four with every section of this. So it's a breath in on a count of four for a count of four, a hold on that inspiration for a count of four, a breathing out for a count of four, and a hold on the full out breath for a count of four. Okay, very easy. If you can't do fours, you can do threes, and that's fine. That's completely fine. Do it in your own rhythm. I will count us in to enjoy just a few rounds together. I'll just tell you, I used to use this breath between patients as when I was doing NHS general practice, just to reset myself if I was running late or if I had had a particularly difficult patient or a difficult situation to deal with. And then wanting to be more fresh for the next person and not carry that energy with me. Um, and it really helps. Sometimes before home visit, I do it as well in the car. Obviously, car was stopped and I had my eyes closed. You can do it with eyes open or closed. I find closed more restful to just shut out that external stimulus. So let's breathe together. So if you just sit comfortably where you are and gently close your eyes if that feels comfortable. We're going to breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, and hold that full exhale, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. And hold, 2, 3, 4. Gently open your eyes and resume normal breathing. It was just a few rounds there. You could do this for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. You could do it for 30 seconds. It just helps to really um, bring down that sympathetic fight or flight response. It puts you more into your parasympathetic rest, digest, heal side of your autonomic nervous system. So it's a really powerful tool. Your breath is a very powerful tool. Oh, look, Byron is telling us is use that breathing and acting. Yeah, it can be super helpful, like before public speaking, for example, really useful breath
Mm.
to use. It's actually used, I believe, in the military as well. So, if it's good enough for them, it is good enough for us. So I think it's a really, really easy one. So I hope that was beneficial to you. And sometimes, we're always breathing. So we have the opportunity, and you can do this with eyes open if you choose.
Yeah, so really, I think we just need to be making a commitment to ourselves to be thinking about what we can do differently to support the fact that maybe we are under stress. And there's some great comments in the chat box, so we'll pick up on those in a minute. Really, in terms of eating, we want to be thinking about eating to balance our blood sugar. We want the steady energy, the fewer cravings. So, following the core meal plan that we've created or the GLP-1 meal plan would be really great. So, Gareth, if you could share those. I noticed that somebody said that they have had a recent scan and they've got very high cortisol and very high inflammation. So, I direct you straight to our Mediterranean style of eating. Really think about bringing in those. If you know that you're under a huge amount of consistent stress, and that may be relevant to you as well, have a look at the Mediterranean eating. It's really like the core meal plan, but just putting a little bit more emphasis on those healthy fats and getting rid of the foods that we know generally can be a little bit more inflammatory. It can make a difference over time. Really, I think self-care, time out, your breathing exercise, I always just find I can feel calm within such a short space of time doing that. So I'm sure your voice helps enormously with that as well. So I'm saying thank you. Don't
Maybe I
forget.
should do a little recording for you. But anyway, you
Yeah,
can do it,
I
you can do
found
it,
one.
guys.
I found one. We've got one we can share actually.
Oh, great.
There's a recording on our YouTube video, so I think I passed it over to Gareth earlier. We can share that in the
Oh
chat box.
gosh, it's probably quite old, so
Go.
you probably might
It's
want to just do the
great.
audio.
Don't you worry about it. Yeah, just do whatever works for you. If it's just standing outside with nothing on your feet and having your feet on the grass, forest bathing is very trendy, but it actually is very calming. It's about you, isn't it? So let's quickly move on and think about the foods that might be helpful to just balance stress a little bit more. There are some key nutrients that we would be thinking about in terms of stress management. Protein, really important, and fats. So really think about where they're coming from, whether they're on your plate, and putting them on your plate first and foremost with every meal, every snack. Protein is really important during stressful periods because it provides the amino acids that produce our neurotransmitters, and those are our sort of chemicals that help us to feel happier and just regulate our mood and help our bodies to manage stress. So we also know that protein is really important at helping to manage our blood sugar as well, which can be, as we've already said, affected by stress quite dramatically. We talk a lot about those factors generally in all of our webinars because we know how important they are. And then just thinking about some of the micronutrients that we know are a little bit more under pressure when we're under continuous stress. The things like the vitamin C, the vitamin Bs, and magnesium. Really think about whether you're popping foods on your plate that might give you those foods. We know magnesium is something that really helps to regulate our nervous system. We know that when we're under a lot of continuous stress, we will utilize those vitamins and minerals perhaps a little bit more than we would in a state when we're not under that continuous stress, which is why it's worth putting a little bit more attention about the foods that you pop onto your plate. So really have a think about that and see if it's something you can put some attention into. No pressure. I think the last thing we want for ourselves when we're under this huge amount of stress all the time is to be overly pressured. And actually, being on a weight loss journey itself for many people can be quite stressful as well. So let's not forget that actually this can all be wrapped in quite a lot of stress too. So I think it's time for us to be thinking self-care. We've got a final poll we're going to share, Sam. I'm going to hand over to you and also just to be thinking maybe you've got something that you could share with us in the chat box.
Yes, I can see a few. There's some few great comments in the chat box. I totally understand the treat table as having worked in hospitals, and I know Ruth has as well, that there's often chocolates floating around the nursing station and all
Yes.
sorts all sorts of things that are not helpful if one is trying to commit to a weight loss journey.
I was offered
Um,
this job not so very long ago in the NHS and was invited to a team meeting, and going to the team meeting made me decide that perhaps the job wasn't right for me because of the treat table. Exactly that. So totally know it. Yeah. It was quite scary. It upset me actually. I was sad for
yeah. It's oh gosh, it's not helpful, and I know it's always it's often. I mean, often those chocolates obviously given by grateful patients and whatnot. So it's actually obviously a lovely gesture and a gesture of gratitude. But yeah, they're not going to give you like a veg box or something or some
yeah.
lovely dates and walnuts. But I think what we need to sort of look at is okay, so if we know there's going to be a treat table at the meeting we're going to go to, what have we had for breakfast? What have we had that has filled us up and we've really enjoyed and that has given us, we don't have to accept something. We don't have to, take a donut or whatever is on that table, you know, because we are sated, we're at a good point and we're not thinking about it. I know it's difficult and it could be a habit of a lifetime when the Jaffa cakes are winking at you or what have you. We have to be realistic, but maybe someone's come up with something great. I used to take Brazil nuts and fruits as treats. Fantastic. I know that it doesn't sound nearly as fun, but actually I love Brazil nuts and I love fruit and I love dates, and those we have to look at changing things for the long term because if you're going to be a nurse for the next however many years, there's likely to be many treat tables in your future. So what are we going to do about it? What strategy is in place for you? Realistically, I don't mean to sound facetious because Ruth has experienced that, I've experienced it too. What can we realistically do because we are committed to our weight loss journey? And it might be that you have a really good breakfast and that's, you've loaded up on your protein and your fiber and you've really enjoyed it. And there's no room for this other stuff, actually. I feel pretty good. Thank you very much. Um, take your own snacks, someone has suggested. Um, we strategies. Someone has asked in the chat box, we're going to go into the Q&A box shortly. Someone's asked about how many times, how to do the box breathing and how many times a day. As many times a day as you would like. You can do it with your eyes open. So you could do it as you are replying to a, maybe you're on a difficult email chain and you're trying to sort something out and it's stressing you out. You could be box breathing at the same time. Um, it's nice to do it with your eyes closed, I think. But if you would like to do it for a couple of minutes before work begins, in your break times, it really is as often as you'd like. It moves that dial from fight or flight to rest, digest, heal. So just if you need it multiple times a day, go for it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's no limit really, as long as you don't start feeling dizzy because you're almost like calming yourself down too much.
You might fall asleep, I suppose that might not help. But I think we want to get you to a point where you're still alert, but don't fall asleep, please,
On
at
these
work.
are our webinars that we've got coming up. Gareth will share the link to sign up for those, please, Gareth, if that's okay. And we will come over to your questions now. So great. And there was a question in the chat box about how often to do the breathing, and I think you've answered that, so that's great. Thank you.
And we've got the last poll here. The things that you've picked up from the webinar, boosting protein, more movement, breath work, as we've talked about, healthy snacks, meal plan. Yeah, fantastic. Be prepared. I think that's such a key one, and it can be tricky when we're already such busy people. But I think it pays dividends, doesn't it? Having the right things on hand and having the right things in the cupboards and not the things that can derail us in the cupboards. I know it's difficult when if you share your kitchen with other folk, then it can be a bit tricky. But then you have your own section that is your section. This is your cupboard, your treat cupboards, and there's still things you enjoy. We're not asking you to have things that are horrible. It's finding the things that you love that love you back.
That is the absolute trick, isn't it? The finding the things that love you back and that you can eat time and time again without feeling bored and like you're missing out. I think it's really crucial. Really sad to say I had an apple and some nut butter at the beach and didn't miss out on having your ice cream, Sam. So that's I was like, this is as good as ice cream. Don't know what's wrong with me. So obviously having a really positive day.
Excellent. Well done.
Somebody's asking how to get the cortisol checked. Is that something the GP will do? I would say, Sam, you're probably in a better place to answer this. My experience would be that no, this isn't a very common test that the GPs will do. It quite often is somebody who has referred you as a specialist within the NHS to get that done. And there are obviously some practitioners who work independently outside of the NHS who can do things like adrenal stress, cortisol, looking at those type of things, or dried urine tests can also look at cortisol. Anything you can add to that, Sam?
I mean, it's not. I think we know when we're stressed. I think it's useful to do, if you're doing a cortisol test, you're looking at a trend. So it's not just a one-off test because your cortisol will change, over the day. We all have a cortisol spike in the morning, for example. There's a natural variation over the day. So I think measuring it, I guess the justification is how useful is it if you already know you're stressed, and you already know that there is some, abdominal fat that you want to shift, and that has been stubborn. Okay. So it's not always hugely useful. It can be I say it's a marker for you and it kind of shows you, yeah, I'm right. It kind of confirms what you already suspect. But it's not one that is very frequently done in the NHS, certainly not in primary care. But your GP may be different and it might be worth a discussion. But yeah, I think if you know that you have stress in your life or you have stress in your life coming, um, I think you already know. And I think it also, just to mention here, I know we have a whole webinar on menopause, perimenopause, and weight loss, but around that time or around the time of in our 40s and, at any time really. But we want to really look at how we manage stress. Stress is a normal part of life. Okay. No one goes through life stress free. Okay. And we need a certain amount of stress to give us the kick and the motivation that we need to do the next thing, do the next task. But it's when it's too much and every day and we don't get a break from it and we don't know how to cope with it and we just kind of push it under the rug and you you push it down and it pops out somewhere else, and you end up having a falling out with somebody because you're stressed about something else. And I think we probably all are aware of how sometimes our emotions can leak out like that. Um,
I guess I'd
go
also say we need to think about the physical stress. So if you have high insulin in your body, for example, that would potentially cause stress. Or if you have a breathing disorder or constant pain from painful knees or painful joints, again,
Absolutely.
physical stress coming from there. For some people, it might be that they're living in an environment that is maybe got more toxins in. For some people, if you have a sensitivity to those, that may be creating stress in your body. And I think we sort of can almost forget that there are many factors. It's not just the emotional side of things that will create that stress. So if you've got a really, really high stress load, it's really worth unpicking what are the factors. If you're a chronic poor sleeper, or if you have chronic insomnia, that is incredibly stressful. You
Yeah.
know, so there are many ways to find the things that are stressing you. It could be the food that you're eating, it could be creating stress because it's just not your food. It isn't the food that loves you for whatever reason. So it's a very complex thing to unpick when you have this situation going on. So it's about finding those different things, nailing them one at a time. When we talk about habit change, it's about finding the things that you can do more easily first, do those, start feeling a benefit, then go on to the things that are a little bit harder to do. Losing weight, being overweight can put stress in our bodies. So actually losing weight and being on this call today and actually focusing on your health can make a huge difference. So you're all doing the right thing. You're all moving in the right direction. And some days are going to be easy, some days are going to be hard, and that's really normal, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a question about just a comment or question in the chat box just about cortisol being very high with inflammation. So they kind of go hand in hand. Just when you've got a high level of inflammation in the body, you tend to have a high cortisol as well. They tend to be something that stress and inflammation tend to be the same, show the same markers in the body. And what I was saying before about menopause, perimenopause, when as the ovaries start to reduce in their functionality, the adrenals take over a lot of the production of our androgens. So we want to make sure for an easier menopause transition that our adrenals are functioning really as well as they can. So having strategies, building that resilience in our 40s, say, is a really powerful thing that we can do for ourselves when we know that this transition is heading our way. Okay.
So, somebody's saying in a question they have a very active, busy workload and they're doing a spinning class 4 times a week. Can a high cortisol level be a factor in slow weight loss? I would say absolutely, because it can have an impact on your insulin production. If we have high cortisol, we're going to potentially produce more insulin. If we're producing more insulin, that is a fat storage hormone as well as a hormone that can help manage blood glucose. So we may be more inclined to store more of that visceral fat. And also, for some people, when that cortisol is very high, it can have a little bit of an impact on how your thyroid converts from the inactive thyroid hormone to the active thyroid hormone. So, yeah, and thyroid is one of those things which is very caught up with our whole metabolism, how we burn food, how active our body is, how effective it is, how finely tuned it is. So, all of these things can have an impact. I think if you are really busy, really active, and you're doing the 4 spinning classes, I'd almost say calm something down somewhere. And maybe the easiest thing
Yeah.
is actually maybe a little bit less spinning and putting some yoga in there or something
Yeah.
like that. What would you
Yeah.
say?
I was going to say exactly the same thing. Like maybe spinning isn't the right exercise for you just because it is such a high intensity exercise. And I think it's great that you
Mm.
like it. But I think maybe what your body really needs if you're very active and stressed during the day is that stretch, is that breathing, is that wind down with a nice yoga class, maybe even a yin yoga class, which is very slow and stretches the fascia. And, you don't have to be Miss Bendy 2026. It's really about, what you can do. Um, is what I would suggest perhaps. So maybe, if you love spinning, maybe try swapping out one class, see how you feel, and just notice how you feel after the class. Maybe it'll improve your sleep, so at least you have that chance to recharge overnight because you've got another busy day the next day. I think that's really key. I think sort of really thrashing your body with extreme classes when you have a very busy daytime anyway, can be counterproductive, even though I applaud your commitment to it.
Very much. It's tough, isn't it? Okay. Somebody is saying that they're really stressed. Not stressed, but their sleep is terrible. Waking and finding it difficult to get back to sleep. My tracker says I don't have refreshing sleep because I'm stressed. Well, the tracker won't know physiologically what's going on, so it's making assumptions based on what it's seeing, maybe. And the question is, does Manjaro create its own stress in on the body? Interesting question, Sam. Any thoughts around that?
Well, I guess it depends how your body is tolerating the Manjaro. If you are able to take a balanced, nutritious diet, even though you're on a weight loss medication, for example, whether you're having any extreme side effects, whether you're becoming dehydrated, for example, with side effects, you haven't mentioned anything about it, so maybe you're tolerating it very well. But just Ruth talked about the sort of the building blocks of a good diet that will support you with your insulin and blood sugar over the day as well. So that if you are not managing to maintain, for example, some people on weight loss injections don't eat regularly or actually eat a lot less than they perhaps ought to be for their height and weight. We need to take a minimum amount of energy of micronutrients every day to maintain all our physical functions. So sometimes when we are um, on any kind of weight loss journey, whether we're on medication or not, we can end up not taking some of those vital things, and end up in a bit of a slightly different situation than we want to be in. So that could cause stress in your body if you are developing micronutrient deficiencies, in your case, perhaps because you're on Manjaro. Um, but so think about that. Think about how you're creating, what you're eating every day. Are you having like a nice balanced plate every day? That's something that could cause stress in your body. I can't think of a reason why Manjaro itself would, unless you were having nasty side effects, and which of course could create stress on your body.
Very much so. And I was just thinking, if you're waking regularly in the night, I was reading some really interesting research last week, just because I had the luxury of reading that about the impact of, we talk about leptin and ghrelin, don't we? But actually, one of the things that we can find when we're overweight is that we can become resistant to leptin. And actually, one of the key signals that we're perhaps a little bit less sensitive to leptin is this waking cycle in the night. So there are all sorts of reasons. And we also know people who are insulin resistant may also wake more frequently in the night. It can also be that you've sort of got into a learnt pattern of behavior with your sleep. So you're just the restful sleep isn't happening so easily for you. So coming along to the sleep webinar or watching on replay might be good to do. But also things you can do is thinking about what you're eating and what you're drinking, really focusing on that protein and the fiber can really help with both leptin sensitivity and insulin sensitivity. Making sure you aren't snacking between meals is really important. Even if you're saying, if you're feeling hungry, then really look at what you're eating in the meals that you're eating and making sure that you're eating enough. And if you are snacking and you really can't avoid snacking, make sure you're snacking on protein and fiber. Make it like a mini meal rather than a treat orientated snack. And then thinking about what you're drinking. So I was talking to somebody the other day and they showed me some lime cordial that they wanted to add to water, but they need to reduce inflammation in their body and reduce their blood glucose. And actually, when I looked at the label, even though it's a cordial, it had half a teaspoon of sugar per glass of cordial, which on the surface, that doesn't sound too awful. But actually, if you think about our blood we have something like 1 teaspoon of sugar in our blood at any one time. So half a teaspoon several times a day could really make the difference between actually losing weight, getting your blood glucose stable. So I think it's worth looking at the labels of the food that you're eating, what you're consuming, what you're drinking, because it becomes critical, especially if your body's telling you that it's not happy, and that's just a clear sign. If you're waking all the time, then there's something very out of balance going on for you. So it's about finding the things that you can do something about and recreate that balance. I, I went on a bit, so I hope that was helpful, Sam. Is there anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that's good. I think as we go on this journey, we sort of start noticing those sort of things that are small that just might be holding us back a little bit when we want to progress. So I think it's a valid point. And sometimes it's weaning ourselves off. You know, we're used to sweet drinks or artificially sweetened drinks all day long. So it doesn't have to be a dead stop. You know, it might be a gradual reduction, and switching over. We can change those habits. You know, we know we can change them. For example, some people, might take 4 sugars in their tea and actually have 10 cups of tea a day. I'm being facetious, but that could be the case. Then I would say it's really important that we reduce the number of sugars in those teas. And actually, do we need that much tea in a day? You know, how do we do that? Because actually, sometimes we think, you know, our weight loss is dependent on just what we're eating, but actually, these days our drinks are really can be full of things that are unhelpful also.
And also, there's so much research, isn't there, Sam, about fructose syrup in drinks. Even if
Yeah.
it's small amounts, cumulatively, that can have a huge impact on your ability to lose weight as well. So I
Yeah,
think
and also inflammation in the body, right? So that we're also talking all about the stress on our body that we might not feel, but actually that can raise, having unfortunately some of these additive products in our foods can increase the background inflammation in our body.
it's a great question that, thank you, Gareth, you've brought it to our attention. Is there a way of knowing if stress has become chronic? Um, Is it also known as burnout, or is that something different? How would you bring yourself back from that? Are you talking back from burnout or back from chronic stress? But I guess both is quite similar. Sam, over to you.
Yeah. Yeah, so I would say burnout is kind of the end of the last steps of chronic stress. So burnout tends to be, I mean, I don't know if there's an actual technical definition of burnout, but it is basically when your body, your systems are overwhelmed by the stress that you have been under, and that could be physical, emotional. It could be a combination of all of the different types of stress that we experience. It can be, like for example, grief can cause huge stress. Planning a wedding can cause enormous stress. There's all sorts of things in life that, can be, you know, family stuff, oh, pet stuff, all kinds of things, house stuff, it can all accumulate. Anyway, so burnout is like kind of the extreme end of it. And for some, well, for many of us, that can be it's a time of what I would say is recognizing when you're under chronic stress. That is sort of daily. For example, if you had terrible osteoarthritis in your knees and every day you are in pain and every day your mobility is restricted and every day it is a struggle to get around your house, to do your shopping, to do all the things you need to do, go to work, etc. But it's that cumulativeness of it, and you perhaps haven't got on top of pain relief or management of those symptoms. Okay, so I would say managing those symptoms is the main thing. Going to your GP, talking to them. Do you need referral to rheumatology? Do you need some support with this? What can be done? What adaptations in your home do you need? How are we going to get you more? Do you need to lose a little bit of weight that will help take some of the pressure off those knees? What are the practical steps? But that is something for an example of what I would call chronic stress. But it's all going to be individual, isn't it? It's like how you respond to it is whatever is going on in your life. Some of us have better coping strategies than others. And it's sometimes when we say chronic, we mean it's ongoing. So it's not like a one stressful day. It's kind of every day is becoming a struggle and it's affecting our function. This whether it's physical stress, emotional stress, and burnout, I would say, is the kind of the last steps of that, where we kind of the function is severely impaired and we kind of have to make a big change to be able to carry on.
And it's also cumulative, isn't it? So I think,
Exactly.
you might have a fairly full stress bucket, and then the final
Like the stress bucket is
straw.
helpful analogy.
Yeah. So sort of like how much stress can you carry in your bucket? And we can all ebb and flow in how much stress can go in there. And then two or three little extra things that are very like minor perhaps in the whole scheme of life, but they could be the straws really that breaks your camel's back. And I think actually, don't hesitate to think, actually, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Really recognize those feelings if you're experiencing them and try and step back, take a day off work if you need to, go
Yeah.
for some
Be
fresh air.
your GP, get some advice, get the support you need,
Absolutely. And I was thinking things like finding even the tiniest moments of joy, those things they call them now glimmers, don't they? And sometimes when you're really stressed, it can be really difficult to notice those glimmers. But finding a little glimmer of happiness can make a big difference, especially when we notice it and we recognize it and we acknowledge it. Because sometimes those glimmers can pass us by because we can be feeling so overwhelmed. But I think it's worth just really recognizing those tiny moments. It can really
Yeah.
help just reduce the amount of load in that bucket. Um, and journaling, I think, can be really helpful, just helping you understand what's going on. We're going to move on because somebody's asking about plateaus, so I hope you're still here. Can we talk about how long a plateau lasts, when they should perhaps increase a medication such as Manjaro if that's happening for them? So, yeah, let's answer that, Sam. So, we know, don't we, that a plateau has no defined time scale, a bit like stress. It's different for everyone. Um, and also, we know that weight loss isn't linear. So, you're not just going to go from A to B and you're going to keep losing weight every week. But I guess a plateau is when week in, week out, you are just sitting in the same weight despite all of your best efforts. That probably is the best way of defining a plateau. And we think from what we've heard from everyone on the webinars in the past, and also from the research we've done, that a plateau can last for weeks, and in some cases, it can last for even going to maybe a few months. So it can be really a very difficult and demoralizing time because you feel as if you're doing something wrong. But what we know from everything we now know, or knew before and now know as well, is that this is a normal stage in everybody's weight loss journey. Not many people go through a weight loss journey without hitting a plateau in some way. We could ask that question actually. It'd be great to know in a webinar how many people have hit a plateau. If anybody has, do put a thumbs up or just say yes in the chat box if you're still here. We'd love to hear from you. It's really common, it's really normal, it isn't unusual at all. So look, here we go, flying through the air. Lots of thumbs up, lots of yeses. Okay, so for those people who are saying yes, how long did it take to come through the other side? We'd love to hear from you today, right now, because it is really, really hard to keep that mental focus. We know
Yeah.
it's a normal phase, don't we, Sam?
And we know that you do come out the other side. And the other things we can look at as different signs. So the scales might not be blimming moving, and it's very frustrating. However, your clothes might start to change how they might fit differently. You might notice that your knees are less painful. You might notice your sleep is better. You might notice your energy levels are better. So there are these other softer signs, or less objective signs than numbers on a scale, that will support you to carry on going. So really look for those things that are also signs that you're progressing, even though it's not, oh, my numbers are falling and every day they're falling, because we know that the weight loss journey is not linear, is not a straight line from A to B. You can't see me because I'm got a background on. Anyway, it's not a straight line from A to B. There will be little wiggles along and a little straight line sometimes. Okay, don't panic. This person in the chat box has asked if it's time to increase their Manjaro dose. If Manjaro is working for you at the dose you are currently on, and you notice that the appetite is suppressed nicely, you're not getting a lot of food noise, you're sticking to your core eating plan, your GLP-1 eating plan, you're doing all the right things, then it doesn't sound like necessarily increasing the dose would be helpful, because it's already doing its job. It just might be you've hit one of these natural plateaus. On the other hand, if you're taking a certain dose and you're noticing, your appetite returning towards the end of the week, or you're not getting the suppression that you used to, or the food noise is creeping in, those things, then and you're tolerating it well, then okay, yes, then it might be a good idea to increase the dose. And so it's going to be dependent on your journey. But I would discuss it with your medication provider.
Yeah.
Um,
Somebody's saying they have a pattern now that they've established that they lose no weight for 3 weeks and then lose 2 kilos in week 4. There you go. Look how unusual. Somebody's using the term non-scale victory. Love that.
oh, I love that.
Yes, so
Non-scale victory. NSV. Love it. Thank you for sharing
we've
that.
also just shared our feedback form, so if anybody would like to fill that in, we'd love to hear what's working for you with the webinars. Any suggestions you have for improvements, we're also very happy to take on board.
Yeah. Any
One,
topics we don't cover that you would like us to cover, please do. And do remember that everyone that signs up to the webinar, you'll automatically get a link to the replay. So and there's a whole channel on YouTube of all the webinar replays. So you can, flip through and
really
play them on double speed if you like.
really great clients. People have been in plateaus for a month. Somebody's been in one for 3 months. This is the reality, guys. We know this is the reality. Somebody's saying they're on Manjaro, they're finding that energy is low. We know that initially on Manjaro, you might find that your energy is maybe a little bit lower. If it's really affecting you adversely, do write into your medication provider, whether that's ourselves or somebody different, and
Yeah.
just get some
Make
conversation.
sure you're eating. Sometimes it can be that you're not just simply not eating enough and your energy level dips, and you're hydrated. Obviously, the hot weather has not helped if you've been in this heat wave as well. Um, yeah, but if it's affecting you day to day, like stopping you working or stopping you do the things you want to do, tell your prescriber and we can offer some more individual advice.
Okay, so really interesting question about a supplement in the chat box. I think we will leave that and have a little think about that
Mm.
because we don't want to make that as a recommendation for everybody to eating very little because of the nausea. So I would say if you're really struggling with nausea, write in, get some advice. Sorry if you've just said that, Sam, but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We are going to call it a day, guys, I think now. So we are back next week. Oh, why didn't I realize this? We're talking about sleep next week. So for anyone who that's relevant to, or anyone who's interested or wants to improve their sleep, do come along. And we very much look forward to seeing you there. Take
Great. Oh, thank you for all your lovely questions and comments. It's really a
care.
pleasure to talk to you every week. So, do leave us some feedback, and we will be in touch with the replay links. And yeah, we'll see you next week.
Really nice that they keep you motivated as well. So thank you for that. Sam, thank you so much. Really lovely being here with you as always. And
Likewise.
Gareth, thank you so
Thank you, Gareth.
much.
Take care, everybody.
Take care, everyone. Bye. And thank you all as well. Sorry, should have said that. We wouldn't be here without you. So thank you for being here. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.